Welcome to Kindle English Podcast, your cozy space to learn, grow, and speak confidently.
Hey everyone, welcome to Kindle English Podcast right here on YouTube. I'm Hazel and I am so excited about this one today because, okay Finn, I need to tell them the story.
Oh no, is this the one I think it is?
So picture this, a friend of mine, American guy, never been outside the States, lands in London for the first time. He's walking around, he's jet lagged, he spills coffee all over himself, and he walks into a shop and says very confidently, "Excuse me, I need new pants." And the shop assistant just stares at him and then walks him over to the underwear section.
Every single time. That story never gets old.
Because in British English, pants means underwear, like your underpants. What Americans call pants, jeans, khakis, whatever. In Britain, those are trousers.
So this poor guy is standing there thinking he's asked for a normal pair of jeans, and the British person is like, "Right this way, sir. Here are your knickers." I mean, the confusion on his face must have been priceless.
And that, my friends, is exactly what we're talking about today. British English versus American English, and specifically about 20 words that mean completely different things depending on which side of the Atlantic you're on. These are words that trip up everyone, not just English learners. Native speakers get confused by these too.
Yeah, and honestly, if you're learning English, this stuff is gold because nobody warned you. You learn English, you think you've got it figured out, and then you land in a different country and suddenly nothing makes sense. So hey, if you're watching this right now, do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and share this with someone who's learning English or someone who's about to travel. Trust me, they'll thank you later.
They really will. Okay, so Finn, I know you've lived in both the US and spent time in London, right?
Yeah, I spent about 2 years in London in my mid-20s, and I'm American, so I was basically that guy in the story every other day. I had so many awkward moments with British English. Like the pants thing, I lived it multiple times.
You actually asked for pants in a store?
I did. I walked into a Marks & Spencer, which is like this big British department store, and I said, "Where are your pants?" And the woman didn't even blink. She just pointed me to the underwear aisle, and I stood there for a solid 30 seconds staring at boxer shorts before I realized what had happened.
Oh, that's beautiful. And see, this is the thing. Trousers is such a normal, everyday word in Britain. Everyone says trousers. But in America, if you said trousers, people would think you were either really old or really fancy.
Yeah, trousers in America sounds like something your grandfather would say. Like, "Let me put on my trousers." No one talks like that. You just say pants.
And what's interesting is in Australia, they actually use both. You'll hear Australians say pants and trousers, though pants is more common these days, but they'd never be confused by either word. It's really the American to British switch where the mix-up happens.
Curious, what about Canada? Do Canadians say pants or trousers?
Canadians mostly say pants, like Americans. But because Canada has that British influence, the whole Commonwealth connection, some older Canadians might still say trousers. It's one of those words where Canada kind of sits in the middle.
Okay, so that's pants versus trousers, which is probably the most famous one. But Hazel, I think the car vocabulary might actually cause more confusion in real life.
Oh, 100%. Let's talk about this. So in American English, the back part of your car where you put your luggage, your groceries, whatever, that's the trunk. But in British English, that same exact thing is called the boot.
The boot. Like, imagine you're an American landing in England and someone says, "Just throw your bags in the boot." You'd be looking around for an actual boot, like a shoe.
A big rubber boot sitting on the street somewhere.
Just shoving your suitcase into a Wellington boot on the sidewalk.
And speaking of sidewalk, that's another one. But let's finish the car first, because there's more.
Oh yeah, the front of the car. In America, you pop the hood. That metal cover over the engine, that's the hood. But in Britain?
That's the bonnet.
The bonnet, like a baby bonnet, like a little hat.
I mean, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. It's like a hat for the engine. The bonnet covers the engine the way a hat covers your head.
Huh, I never thought of it that way. But yeah, that's actually kind of logical. More logical than hood, honestly. What's a hood? Like Robin Hood? A hoodie?
I think it comes from the idea of a covering, like a hood on a cloak. But yeah, bonnet is way more charming. So just to make sure everyone's got this, in a British car, you've got the bonnet at the front and the boot at the back. In an American car, same exact vehicle, it's the hood at the front and the trunk at the back.
And then there's petrol versus gas. This one's huge.
This one is so important if you're traveling. In Britain, Australia, and most of the Commonwealth, the fuel you put in your car is called petrol, short for petroleum. But in America and Canada, everyone says gas, short for gasoline.
Which, by the way, is kind of weird when you think about it, because it's a liquid. You're pouring a liquid into your car and calling it gas.
That's true. It's technically wrong.
Americans just went with it. We were like, yeah, gas, that works. Don't question it.
And then there's the vehicle itself. A big vehicle that carries goods. In America, that's a truck. But in Britain, that's a lorry.
Now see, lorry is one of those words that I think sounds so British. Like every time I hear the word lorry, I picture a rainy motorway somewhere in England with one of those big vehicles rumbling along. You don't hear lorry anywhere else, do you?
Not really. Australians say truck, Canadians say truck. Lorry is very specifically British, though everyone in Britain would understand truck too. It's just that lorry is the more natural, everyday word there.
So we've got a full car vocabulary lesson happening here without even trying. Boot, bonnet, petrol, lorry, all British. Trunk, hood, gas, truck, all American.
And if you're driving in any English-speaking country, these are words you'll genuinely need. Like, imagine you're at a petrol station in the UK, or a gas station if you're in the States, and someone says, "Could you pop the bonnet?" If you don't know that word, you're just standing there looking confused.
Been there. A mechanic in London once told me to open the bonnet and I literally froze. I was like, my what?
Okay, so we've covered cars. Let's talk about where you live, because this is another big area where British and American English just completely diverge.
Yeah, so in America, if you rent a place in a building with other units, you live in an apartment. That's the word, apartment. Everybody uses it.
But in Britain, that same thing is called a flat. You live in a flat, you're looking for a flat, you're flatmates with someone.
Flatmates. That's a good one. So in America, you'd say roommates, right? But in Britain, it's flatmates because you're sharing a flat.
Exactly. And here's what's interesting. In Australia, you'll hear both flat and apartment, but apartment has become more common, especially for newer, fancier buildings. Like a flat might feel more like a modest, older style place, and an apartment sounds a bit more modern.
That's a really subtle difference. So even within British-influenced English, the words can shift depending on the vibe of the place.
And this is why I think this topic is so important for English learners. It's not just about right or wrong. It's about which word fits the context and the country you're in. If you're in London and you say, "I'm looking for an apartment," everyone will understand you, but you might sound a bit American. If you say, "I'm looking for a flat," you sound more natural for that context.
Pro tip. When I was flat hunting in London, I kept accidentally saying apartment on the phone with estate agents, and I could hear them mentally categorizing me as a tourist.
Estate agents. That's another one, actually. In America, they're called real estate agents or realtors.
Same job, different name. It's like the English language had a meeting and said, let's just make everything slightly different on each continent.
And nobody sent the memo to the other side.
Oh, wait, Hazel, when you say someone's going up in a building, like to the 10th floor or whatever, what do they call that box you step into?
In America, that's an elevator. In Britain, it's a lift.
A lift. So when a British person says, take the lift to the 3rd floor, they mean the elevator, not that someone's going to physically pick you up and carry you.
Although that would be nice sometimes.
Honestly, after climbing stairs in a few old London buildings that didn't have a lift, I would have appreciated someone carrying me.
Oh yeah, those old buildings with no no lift are brutal, especially when you're on the 5th floor with groceries.
Don't remind me. I lived on the 4th floor of a building in Brixton with no lift, and every time I came back from the supermarket, I questioned every life choice that led me there.
But see, you just naturally used both words. You said elevator, then lift again. And that's actually how a lot of people who've lived in both countries end up speaking. You mix them, and that's totally fine.
Okay, Hazel, we have to talk about food, because food vocabulary is where things get truly ridiculous between British and American English.
Oh, this is my favorite part. Let's start with the classic, chips.
So in America, chips are thin, crispy, crunchy snacks that come in a bag. Potato chips, Doritos, whatever. Thin and crispy. But in Britain...
In Britain, chips are what Americans call fries. Thick, soft, usually served with fish. Fish and chips, that's fish and fries, if you're translating to American English.
Okay, so wait. If British chips are American fries, Then what do British people call the thin, crispy things that Americans call chips?
Crisps.
Crisps, of course. So the whole thing shifts. American chips equal British crisps. American fries equal British chips. It's like a word swap game that nobody agreed to.
It really is. And this genuinely causes confusion. I've heard stories of Americans in London ordering chips, expecting a bag of Lay's, and getting a plate of thick-cut fries, and being very confused.
And then not being mad about it because British chips are actually amazing.
They really are, especially with vinegar. Okay, next one. Biscuits.
This one is chaos.
Total chaos. So in British English, a biscuit is what Americans would call a cookie, a sweet, crunchy, baked snack, like a chocolate digestive, a hobnob, a custard cream. Those are all biscuits in Britain.
But in America, a biscuit is a completely different food. An American biscuit is a soft, fluffy, savory bread roll, like you'd have biscuits and gravy for breakfast in the South. It's basically a warm, buttery bread thing.
So when a British person offers you a biscuit, they're offering you a cookie with your tea. When an American offers you a biscuit, they're offering you bread.
Imagine a British person visiting Texas and someone says, "Want a biscuit?" And they're expecting a nice chocolate digestive. And instead they get this savory bread ball covered in white gravy.
The culture shock on their face.
And they'd probably be too polite to say anything. They just eat it and smile.
Because that's the British way. Just politely eat whatever you're given and complain about it later in private.
Unlike Americans who would immediately say, "This isn't a biscuit. Where's the chocolate?"
That's fair. That's fair. But you know, what I find fascinating is that Australia follows the British usage on this one. A biscuit in Australia is a cookie. They'd call them biscuits, not cookies. And New Zealand, too.
What about Canada?
Canada uses cookie, like America, but they'd understand biscuit in the British sense, too, because of that Commonwealth connection we talked about earlier. Canadians are kind of bilingual between British and American English in a way.
They're the translators. They're the middle ground.
They really are. And hey, if any of this is new to you and you're finding it helpful, drop a comment and let us know which one surprised you the most. I'm genuinely curious.
All right, so we've done cars, homes, and food. What's next?
Everyday life, walking around, being a person in public.
Being a person in public. That's a category now.
It is today. So let's start with one of the most British things in the entire English language, the queue.
Oh, the queue. Q-U-E-U-U-E. 5 letters and 4 of them are unnecessary.
That is the most accurate description of that word I've ever heard.
So for anyone wondering, a queue is a line. That's it. When British people say join the queue, they mean get in line. When they say there's a massive queue, they mean there's a long line.
And this is a big cultural thing too. In Britain, queuing is almost sacred. You do not cut the queue. You do not push ahead. You stand there patiently, in order, and you wait. It's like an unwritten social law.
More than unwritten. I've seen British people get genuinely upset when someone skips the queue. Like they won't yell or anything, that would be too dramatic. But the looks, the disapproving glances, the quiet tutting.
The tutting, yes. That little tss, 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 tss sound that British people make when they're annoyed but too polite to say anything.
In America, if someone cuts the line, and we do say line, by the way, never queue, people will just straight up say something. Hey, the line starts back there, buddy.
Very different approach. And then there's the word pavement.
Okay, this one trips me up because it exists in both versions of English but means different things.
Exactly. In British English, the pavement is the sidewalk. It's the paved path next to the road where people walk. So if someone in London says stay on the pavement, they mean stay on the sidewalk.
But in American English, pavement usually refers to the road surface itself, like the car's tires screeched on the pavement. You're talking about the road.
Right. So same word, different meaning depending on the country. A British person walks on the pavement, an American drives on the pavement.
That could actually be dangerous if you mix them up. A British person tells you to walk on the pavement and you think they mean the road.
Yeah, you'd be walking straight into traffic. So this one's actually important to know if you're traveling.
Really important. Sidewalk in America, pavement in Britain. Got it.
And in Australia, they actually say footpath more often than either sidewalk or pavement.
Footpath. That's actually the most logical one. It's a path for your feet.
Right? Why didn't everyone just go with footpath? It's so straightforward.
Because English wouldn't be English if it made sense, Hazel.
That should be the tagline for this whole podcast. English, it doesn't make sense.
Okay, let's keep going with everyday stuff, because there are so many of these. What about rubbish versus trash?
Oh, this is a good one. So in American English, the stuff you throw away is trash or garbage. You take out the trash. You throw something in the garbage. Those are the everyday words.
But in British English, all of that is rubbish. Throw it in the rubbish bin. That film was absolute rubbish. It works both as a noun for actual waste and as an adjective meaning something's terrible.
That's such a good point. In Britain, you can say that's rubbish, meaning that's terrible or that's nonsense. It's way more versatile than the word trash.
I mean, Americans do say that movie was trash in slang, but it's more informal. In Britain, rubbish is just standard everyday vocabulary. Your grandmother would say it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not slang at all in British English, a perfectly respectable word.
And the bin. That's the trash can, right?
Yep. In Britain, you throw things in the bin. In America, you throw things in the trash can or the garbage can. Same thing, different words.
And in Australia, I think they say bin too, don't they?
They do. Bin is very common in Australia. Chuck it in the bin. You'd hear that all the time in Sydney or Melbourne.
Chuck. That's very Australian. Chuck it in the bin.
I love that. Okay, what about post versus mail?
Ooh, yeah. So in America, you get the mail. You go to the mailbox. You mail a letter. The mail carrier delivers your mail. Everything is mail.
But in Britain, that same system is the post. You get the post, you go to the post box, you post a letter. The postman or postal worker delivers your post.
And the funny thing is, both countries have a post office. Like, even in America, it's the post office, not the mail office.
Oh, that's true. I never thought about that. Americans say post office, but then say mailbox. It's inconsistent.
Consistency? In English? Never heard of it.
Fair enough. But this is one of those really practical ones. If you're in London and someone says, "Has the post come yet?" they're asking if the mail has been delivered. And if you're filling out a form in Britain and it says post something, it means mail it. Don't go looking for a place to stick it on a wall.
That would be a different kind of post, the social media kind.
Exactly. Context is everything in English.
You know, I think that's actually one of the biggest lessons for anyone learning English. The same word can mean totally different things depending on where you are and what context you're in. And these British versus American differences are the perfect example of that.
They really are. And this is why we do this podcast, honestly, because textbooks won't teach you this stuff. They'll teach you the word pants, but they won't tell you that it means underwear in London. You need real conversation, real context. And that's what Kindle English Podcast is all about.
Okay, Hazel, I want to talk about one that I think confuses more people than any other. And it's a word that seems so simple.
Which one?
Holiday versus vacation,
Oh, yes, this one is deceptively confusing.
right? So in American English, a holiday is a specific day. Christmas is a holiday. Thanksgiving is a holiday. The 4th of July is a holiday. It's a named, fixed celebration.
But when you take time off work to go somewhere, like you fly to Spain for 2 weeks, in America, that's a vacation. I'm going on vacation. You'd never say I'm going on holiday in American English. That sounds very British.
But that's exactly what you say in British English. I'm going on holiday. Where are you going on your holidays? We've just come back from holiday. Holiday in Britain covers both the celebration days and the time off.
And this catches people off guard because the word holiday exists in both versions of English, but it has a wider meaning in British English than in American English.
Yeah, and in Australia, they use holiday the same way the British do. Going on holiday is totally normal Australian English.
Same in New Zealand. It's really just the Americans who separate holiday from vacation as two distinct concepts.
We like categories. We like things in neat little boxes.
And yet you spell color without a U and wonder why the rest of the English-speaking world judges you.
Low blow, Hazel, low blow.
I couldn't resist. Okay, let's do trainers versus sneakers because this one comes up all the time.
Yeah, so trainers. In British English, trainers are athletic shoes, running shoes, what Americans call sneakers or tennis shoes.
And this is one where it's not just a vocabulary difference, there's a whole cultural vibe difference too. In Britain, if you say nice trainers, you're complimenting someone's casual shoes. In America, you'd say nice sneakers or maybe nice kicks.
Oh yeah, kicks is very American slang, but trainers is literally the standard word in Britain. It's not slang at all.
And again, Australia goes both ways. You'll hear trainers and sneakers, though runners is also common in Australia.
Runners? As in running shoes, but shortened to just runners?
Cheerfully. Yep, Australians love to shorten everything. They'd never use a long word when a short one exists.
That's so true. Everything in Australian English is abbreviated. Afternoon becomes arvo, breakfast becomes brekkie, barbecue becomes Barbie.
And this connects to something really interesting about how English works around the world. Each country hasn't just adopted different words, they've developed completely different relationships with the language, different rhythms, different shortcuts, different vibes.
That's actually a really beautiful way to put it. It's not about right or wrong. It's about flavor, regional flavor.
Exactly. And when you're learning English, you get to choose your flavor. Do you want to sound more British, more American, more Australian? All of them are correct. All of them are real English.
And honestly, most people end up with a mix. I know people who say flat instead of apartment because they learned English from British shows, but then they say trash instead of rubbish because they watch American YouTube. And that's completely fine.
It really is. Your English is your English.
You know, Hazel, all of this reminds me of probably the most confusing moment I had when I was actually living in London.
Oh, tell me, what happened?
Okay, so I'd been there about 3 months, and I was starting to get the hang of British vocabulary. I was saying rubbish bin instead of trash can. I was taking the lift instead of the elevator. I was feeling pretty good about myself.
Uh-oh, confidence before a fall.
Exactly. So I'm at a friend's house, and she says to me, "Finn, could you look in the boot and grab the biscuits?" And I just completely short-circuited.
Oh no.
I was like, "The boot? We're inside. We're in a flat. There's no car here. And biscuits? Are we having bread or cookies?" My brain literally froze for about 5 seconds while I tried to decode this sentence.
So what did she mean?
She meant the boot of her car, which was parked outside, and she wanted the biscuits, meaning cookies, that she'd bought from the supermarket and left in the trunk. Sorry, the boot.
See, and you just corrected yourself. You said trunk and then said boot. That's the bilingual brain at work.
It is. After 2 years in London, my brain was just constantly translating between the two. I'd be on the phone with my mom in the States saying, "I need to pop to the shop," and she'd be like, "What has happened to you?"
That's adorable, though. That's how language works. You absorb the English around you. And this is actually really encouraging for learners, right? If you immerse yourself in a particular type of English, you'll naturally start picking up those words and phrases.
Totally. And the reverse is true too. My British friends who've spent time in America start saying trash and sidewalk without even realizing it. Language is contagious.
It really is. You know what that reminds me of? Earlier when we talked about the queue, the line, and how British people are so serious about it, I was thinking about how even the way people describe waiting is different across countries.
What do you mean?
Well, in America, you stand in line or wait in line, but in Britain, you queue up or join the queue. And in Australia, you might hear either, but they'd also say get in line pretty naturally. The point is, the action is the same. You're waiting your turn, but the language you wrap around that action changes depending on where you learned English.
That's such a good observation. And you know what? It goes beyond individual words. The whole style of communication can be different. Like, Americans tend to be more direct. Brits use more indirect language, more hedging, more politeness.
Oh, that's so true. A British person might say, "I'm not sure that's quite right," when they mean you're completely wrong.
And an American would just say, "That's wrong. Done."
And an Australian would say, "Nah, mate."
3 words, maximum efficiency.
Which is why understanding these differences matters beyond just vocabulary. It's about understanding how people communicate, not just what words they use.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes learning English through real conversations like this one, like listening to podcasts, watching shows, talking to people, so much more valuable than just memorizing word lists, because you're learning the whole package, the words, the tone, the culture, the context.
Okay, Finn, before we start wrapping up, I want to do something fun. Of all these British versus American differences we've talked about, pants and trousers, boot and trunk, flat and apartment, chips and fries, biscuits and cookies, queue and line, pavement and sidewalk, rubbish and trash, lift and elevator, bonnet and hooded, petrol and gas, lorry and truck, holiday and vacation, post and mail, trainers and sneakers. Which one surprised you the most when you first encountered it?
I think, honestly, it was bonnet. When someone first told me to check under the bonnet, I had this vivid image of like a Victorian-era women's hat, and I could not connect that to a car engine. It just seemed like the most random word choice.
I love that. For me, it was probably the chips versus crisps thing, because I grew up saying chips, and the idea that my chips were someone else's fries and their chips were my crisps was just, it felt like a riddle.
It is a riddle. It's like that brain teaser where you swap the names of colors. Imagine calling blue red and red blue. That's what chips and crisps feel like.
That is such a good analogy.
And I think that's what makes this topic so fun. It's not stressful vocabulary, it's amusing vocabulary. These aren't words that'll make or break your English, but knowing them makes you feel in on the joke.
Like you're part of the club. Like you understand the culture, not just the language.
Exactly. And that's a really satisfying feeling when you're learning a language.
Oh wait, I just thought of one more we haven't fully covered. What about when you're driving on the road? Not the pavement, Finn, the actual road. And there's a big lorry ahead of you, and you need to stop for petrol. In America, you'd say there's a truck ahead of you, and you need gas. But the word for the actual road itself can be different too.
Oh, right. In Britain, a big road is a motorway. In America, it's a highway or a freeway or an interstate.
Motorway versus highway. Another one. It never ends.
It literally never ends. We could do a sequel to this episode.
British versus American English, Part 2, Part 3, Part 47.
By episode 50, we'll have covered every word in the dictionary, and they'll all be different.
It sometimes feels that way, doesn't it?
But here's the thing, and I think this is really important for anyone who's listening and feeling overwhelmed. You do not need to learn all of these at once. You really don't. Just pick the version of English that you're most likely to use. If you're planning to live in London, focus on British English. If you're moving to New York, focus on American English. You'll naturally pick up the other variations over time.
That's such good advice. Don't try to memorize every single difference. Just be aware that the differences exist. That way, when someone says put it in the boot or join the queue or pop to the post office, you won't be completely lost. You'll think, oh right, that's the British way of saying it, and you'll understand.
And understanding is the goal. Not perfection, understanding.
Okay, I feel like we've covered so much ground today. My brain is genuinely buzzing.
Buzzing is a good word. My brain is full, like completely full of vocabulary.
I think if you take away just a few things from today, like the whole pants versus trousers situation which started us off, or the car vocabulary with the boot and the bonnet and the petrol, those are the kinds of words you'll actually encounter in real life. And then the food ones, chips and crisps and biscuits, those will come up the moment you walk into any restaurant or cafe in a different English-speaking country.
And the everyday stuff too. Knowing that a queue is a line, that rubbish is trash, that a holiday can mean a vacation, that trainers are sneakers, this stuff makes you feel so much more comfortable when you're actually living in or visiting an English-speaking country.
And that's what we want for you. We want you to feel comfortable. We want you to understand real English as it's actually spoken, not just textbook English. Thank you so much for spending this time with us here on Kindle English Podcast. It honestly means the world to both of us.
It really does. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you did because I had a blast, smash that subscribe button. Share this with a friend, a classmate, a coworker, anyone who's learning English or who's about to travel to an English-speaking country. They'll get a lot out of this one.
And leave us a comment telling us your favorite British or American English difference. Or if you have a funny story like Finn's pants in a department store moment, we want to hear it.
You're never going to let me live that down, are you?
Never. It's too good.
Fair enough.
We'll see you in the next episode, everyone. Take care of yourselves, keep practicing, keep listening, and remember, whether you say flat or apartment, lorry or truck, post or mail, your English is valid.
And if anyone ever asks you for pants in London, just point them to the trouser section. You'll be a hero. See you next time, everyone.